This last one that I want to quote, and it's important, is a believer believes that Allah is ever watching over us. Therefore, whether there is absence or presence of a law enforcing authority, it doesn't make a difference. A Muslim shall not commit an act of aggression. A Muslim shall not commit a crime. A Muslim shall not steal. Whether there is that camera, there is that policeman, or it doesn't exist. It doesn't matter. A Muslim is upright because the all watching is there all the time. Whether that camera runs out of power or is powered, it doesn't matter. So that's very important as a cleansing method of a society based on Islam. Everybody is watching because every act of aggression is written down and you shall answer for it. That's the mentality that is shaped by this concept of Tawheed. We know that Allah is watching you at every moment, decision that you are about to make. And therefore, and we hear about this quite a bit, you know, the cheating on the wife and vice versa. This is an act of indecency that is not to be done by a Muslim. How could you commit such an act and then next hour stand up in front of Allah to worship Him? It doesn't fit. It's a degeneration of the moral of the believer. And so it is not the authority only. It is this moral drive that drives the believer to be on that constancy of righteousness, regardless whether the authority is there or not. And that's what makes us, when we hear about the mistreatment of women, the mistreatment of children, why is it so? Is it that the husband feels that he is strong at home and therefore he can abuse and do what they do? If there was this ever watching of the divine, we shall not trespass, because this is a line that should not be crossed. And so this is also very important. Briefly, there is a long list of the nullifiers of Tawheed. And the nullifiers here is, okay, we have established all of this. Now we have declared it, established it, understood it, and then by an act of a declaration of the tongue or a word or an action, it nullifies it all. So what are these nullifiers of Tawheed? As I said here, it's by no means the full, but it is just a summary. There is, as I said, written text on Islamic creed that they go in a lot of details about each one of these. The first one is associating others with Allah in worship. This is extremely serious because Allah says that He forgives every sin and any sin except this. When we have understood, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala initially invites us by saying, فَعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Know that He is the only Lord. So He is asking us to know. So we have to spend the time, the effort, the intellect to learn this. But once we learn it, going back and crossing when we learn it and accept it. Of course, if we don't accept it, it's the freedom of the individual, whether to accept or not. But once we learn it, accept it, and declare it in words, because that's what the Shahada is. It's understanding and declaring in words. Once you do that, going back on it, especially in this specific area, that I am a Muslim, and yet I believe that there is somehow an idol out there, whether be it a human or a stone, that has powers beyond what Allah is. Or even any powers, in fact, that are beyond its nature. A stone has no power, period. Whether it's shaped or formed or colored, a stone is a stone, and it remains a stone. Has no power. The human being has powers only what Allah created for it. A human being does not deserve to be worshipped. He is not fit to be worshipped. But for some reason, for any lapse of intellect or an error of the mind, we do this. Then we have crossed the line. And this is a major sin. So this is one negation of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second is linked to the first, which is the shirk of uluhiyya, which is really the worship, be it standing up in prayer or offerings or in any of those natures, or someone that is deserving of anything beyond Allah. That is also a nullifier of shirk. The third is in lordship, which is ascribing to anyone the power of creating anything that is not the area that the humans or anybody else has except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The other one that seems to be very risky because people may fall into it, which is giving a name of Allah to someone. For example, you say, you name somebody Allah, astaghfirullah, that is not acceptable, or somebody Khaliq. Abdul Khaliq, the servant of the Khaliq, is the correct name, but Al-Khaliq is a no-no. You cannot call someone the creator, because he is not. So, and things of that sort. The other thing is the attributes. When we say Allah has an attribute, for example, that He creates, and then we go into assigning that to somebody else. Because as we said, what man does and what the creation of Allah is are two different things. Shirk of love, this is very important. A believer is to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like nothing else. And the demonstration of the love of Allah is the love of His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. Right, so the love of the Messenger is by following his footsteps. That's how we love the Messenger. It is not just a lip service. It is the love of the Messenger by sticking to his guidance. And by loving the Messenger, because we love his guidance is from Allah, therefore that is a love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The last one is this non-implementation of Allah's laws. For example, if Allah says that when we die, these are the laws of inheritance, and you decide and you say, no, I am not going to implement that, I am going to do my own calculation and give X, Y, and Z to whatever I want. That is preferring your own mindset and your own desire over what Allah has legislated. So preferring the legislation of anyone else over what Allah legislates is another major sin. So this is not to happen. So the guidance of the Prophet is supreme, the guidance of Allah is supreme, and anything else is second and third to them. And we shall not mix between the two, and we should not give supremacy to anything else. And there are verses in the Quran, in fact, in chapter 5, there are verses that are almost one after the other on this topic, that whoever does not judge, which means legislation here, does not take the rule of Allah or does not rule their lives by it, then they are disbelievers. Allah characterizes them as such. Kafirun and mushrikun and so forth, or zalimun. And so this is in a nutshell this topic. As I said, it's very broad, and in the because of the tightness of time, I gave 3 references. I would think the Islam Beliefs and Teachings is a very good place to start. It's a very simple book that talks about these things and more. Also, Al-Mawdudi Rahimahullah's books Toward Understanding Islam, he expands on some of these aspects. And there is a website which is very reliable. It's called Islam Web. You can go to it as well and pull some information from there as well if you want more, inshallah. Jazakallahu khairan, and thank you for listening.